Hi guys, welcome to lesson 2.3 from Elite Youth Business Academy. Today's topic is understanding price. Table of contents. So first we're going to start off talking about the market economy price. Second, we're going to talking about the business costs that go into starting a business. And number three, we're going to talk about different market structures. To start off, we're going to talk about market economies, which I'm going to hand off to Guhan.
So, a market economy is where consumers are motivated to buy the goods that they need and businesses want to earn profits. What this means is that consumers go out and they buy whatever they want. For example, they can either choose to buy 1,450 Rolls Royces or 69 million McDonald's. It's up to them which one they want to spend their money on, and they can do it accordingly. So businesses and consumers work together to determine the price and quantity demanded of goods and services. If consumers prefer a lot of goods, a large quantity of goods, then businesses may increase the price. Or if consumers don't purchase a lot of a certain good, they might decrease the price. And this is done through a concept known as supply and demand, which is very important in economics. So the supply is the quantity that a producer is willing to produce. For example, the cost of wood cutting between $40 versus $20. When the cost of wood cutting is $40, or when they can sell the wood for $40, they may prefer producing more of it. Or when they can only sell it for $20, they may prefer selling less of it. If you look at the image on the top over here, you can see that as the quantity supplied of goods increases, so does the price. The demand, on the other hand, is the quantity of goods or service a consumer is willing to buy it for. For example, when wood costs $40, a consumer might be willing to buy less, whereas when wood costs $20, consumers may be willing to buy more. As you can see in the graph over here, as the price decreases over time, the quantity that the people are willing to buy increases as well. The equilibrium price is where supply and demand intersect, revealing the price and quantity of the good. So the businesses may produce a certain amount of goods at $30, and consumers may buy a certain amount of goods at $30 as well, making an equilibrium point where both of them are willing to compromise with each other, and that will be the price of the good.
So now I want to talk about elasticity versus inelasticity. Elastic demand is where the demand for a product is definitely affected by price. So, for example, like this would be hotel rooms, because when there's a higher price for hotel rooms, the demand for getting a hotel room at like a really high class hotel goes down. And in the same using the same logic, inelastic demand is where the change in price does not really affect the change in demand, um, meaning it's not like easily replaceable. Basically, this means that electricity and water is usually has no acceptable substitutes, is small in relation to consumers' income, and is classified as a basic need rather than a want, whereas the hotel rooms which have the elastic demand are considered a want. As you can see in the table above, elastic demand is more steep than inelastic demand is more steep than elastic demand, and this is for that same reason. It's less replaceable than elastic demand. Yeah. And Guhan went over this earlier, but the equilibrium price and quantity is the price at which the supply equals demand and the lines intersect. So where consumers buy exactly the amount that is produced, as you can also see in the graph here, where it's detailed at point E. Next, we're going to talk about the cost of business, where I'm going to hand it back over to Guhan.
So the first concept is how to price goods and what are the resources, and this is dependent on the resources involved and how much they cost. So looking at the cost, there are two main costs, the fixed cost and the variable cost. The fixed cost, also known as sunk cost, are costs paid regardless of the quantity of goods produced. For example, if I'm starting a restaurant, then things like my rent, insurance, and loan will all be fixed costs. Or even if I'm making more food, that cost, the fixed cost does not increase. The variable costs, on the other hand, are costs that go up or down depending on the quantity of goods or service produced. For example, the materials needed to build a product or the ingredients needed to make my food. As the supply increases, as the more amount of like good products that I sell or more amount of food that I sell, the variable costs increase or decrease as well. Having a high fixed cost is a risk because your revenue earned cannot back the costs. When you're having variable costs, you can argue that because the amount of revenue you're making increases, even though the variable costs increase, there's limited impact. On the other hand, when you have high fixed cost, you can't really say that my revenue increase is diminishing my fixed cost. That doesn't work like that. Even when your revenue is low, the fixed cost stays the same.
Now I'm going to talk about marginal benefits and marginal costs. These are basically economic decisions that can be made through like marginal reasoning, marginal analysis. Marginal benefits are like the advantage of producing one more unit of a good or service. Basically, what benefits do you gain from producing one more unit? And the marginal cost are the disadvantages of producing one more unit of good or service. Like how much more will it cost the producers versus how much can they earn from like from customers buying that product. The question you need to ask yourself, is it worth, like for example of a restaurant, is it worth keeping a restaurant open for 2 more hours every day? And to consider this, you have to consider the marginal benefits versus the marginal costs. If the marginal benefits are greater than the marginal cost, you definitely want to keep your restaurant open for 2 more hours. But if the costs are greater than the benefits, then you do not want to do that. Next, we're going to talk about market structure. So now we're going to talk about perfect competition, which is the main and like most important like form of competition in businesses. Basically, this comprises a very large number of businesses with pretty much identical products and many buyers for those products. From various different firms, buyers tend to be like more well informed, have many choices, with price being a deciding factor. With so many new business, so many businesses in the industry, it is very like hard for a price to be a single business to raise the price. Therefore, all firms in perfect competition are known to be price takers. Consumers also control the market, and as more firms earn profit, new businesses will enter and leave the market in the long run. Examples of perfect competition could be agricultural product and gas. As you can see in the graph above, the marginal cost, where the marginal cost meets the marginal revenue or the price, that's going to be the profit maximizing quantity for each firm. As you can see, the price and marginal revenue is a horizontal line because, as like I said before, firms are price takers and they cannot change the price. Therefore, the marginal revenue for each firm will be constant. An additional rule for all firms, whether it's in perfect competition or other different types of competitions, is that if the marginal cost is less than the average variable cost, which would be around like here below the AC, that would mean that they have to shut down in the long run.
So next, moving on to monopolistic competition. This is where there are a large number of independent businesses with different goods and services. So if you guys remember with the previous perfect competition, it's a very similar concept, except in perfect competition, there are identical goods and services, and in monopolistic competition, there are different goods and services. There's a competitive market with a small portion, with each business controlling a small portion of the market share, meaning that each business has to be able to find a way to differentiate themselves. And one way that they do it is through prices, where prices are determined competitively. It's very important for these people to differentiate their products, and it makes it easy for companies to leave and enter the market. So examples of these include things like retail stores and restaurants, where there are a lot of different businesses, but each of them have slight differences with each other. And now Soham is going to explain the graph at the top over here.
So as you can see in this case, marginal revenue is not a constant line. It is actually steeper than the actual revenue, which is equal to demand AR. Marginal revenue, again, the profit maximizing quantity is still where the MC is equal to MR, but it's going to be the in this monopolistic competition, instead of selling at that price, that equilibrium price, monopolistic competition, firms in monopolistic competition can actually sell at the price PS. And since it's lower than the average AC at top, it won't shut down, but you also know that they're not making a profit.
And now moving on to the oligopoly market. This is where a market is dominated by a small number of businesses that gain a majority of the revenue. So in these cases, there are certain businesses that control almost the entire industry. These companies sell similar goods and services that are close to substitutes. It's difficult for new businesses to leave and enter the industry. Examples of oligopolies include things like automobile companies like Toyota, Honda, airline companies like American Airlines and Delta Airlines, OPEC, soda beverage companies like Pepsi and Coca-Cola, and various other companies where they control a majority of the revenue in the industry. So now looking at the graph.
So typically, where producers would want to produce where demand is inelastic, because it would hardly respond to when prices fall, so customers are forced to buy that product. Whereas elastic demand corresponds more to like wants, so then they would make theoretically less profit over when the demand is elastic compared to when it's inelastic. Also, to build up what Guhan said about OPEC, just to clarify, OPEC is a bunch of countries in the Middle East that control oil and trade oil to multiple different, like all over the world essentially. Countries like Saudi Arabia and Oman, like countries in the Middle East like that. And yeah, now I'm going to talk about monopolies. Basically, a monopoly occurs when there's only one producer of a good, and so customers have nowhere else to buy from, and they're forced to buy from the monopoly. The monopoly is also the same as the whole market, so they can theoretically sell as little quantity of the good as they want, but charge the highest possible price, which causes inconveniences and is very inefficient in the long run. Monopolies also have high barriers to entry so that no other firms can enter the entry, which helps it retain its monopoly status. Examples of monopolies could be Standard Oil, PG&E, Google, as well as Tyson Foods. As you can see in the graph over there, marginal total revenue will be maximized when the marginal revenue is equal to zero, and the economic profit section is this tiny little section over here, where because the firms are going to be selling at price PF but at quantity QF, as you can see, because they're going to sell less but charge more. And yeah, so now we're going to go on to a quiz. Take your time before you answer these questions. I'm going to read it out and just pause the video and just feel free to like answer the question and then check the answers later. Number one, what are three perfect ways to describe perfect competition? Number two, what are three ways to describe monopolistic competition? Number three, what is an example of an oligopoly? Number four, what characteristics separate a monopoly from other types of economic competition? And yeah, I hope you guys pause the video, but either way, here are the answers. For number one, the answer would be many buyers, many sellers, and identical products to define perfect competition. To define monopolistic competition, number two, there would be many sellers with differentiated products and prices determined by each firm separately. Number three, examples of monopolies could be oligopolies could be Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Delta, American Airlines, United, Disney, Toyota, and AT&T, etc., as Guhan previously mentioned. And four, characteristics of a monopoly that like separate itself from other forms of competition could be that there's a single seller with high barriers to entry, lack of substitutes, and it has full control over price.
Before we move on to the next slide, I would like to let you guys know that in this slideshow especially, there were a lot of economic theories, and Elite Youth Business Academy will be making an economics related course in the future if you guys want to learn more about it. In this course, we mentioned it just to make it easier for you to understand future lessons. So now, moving on to our joke, I found a Monopoly set without the instructions.
What are the chances? What a funny joke.
Yeah, if you guys wanted to understand it, basically one of the card in Monopoly is the chance card. And if you don't have the instructions, then you might not know what it is, which is why it's one of the chances.
Thank you for listening. Please feel free to comment any questions you have and contact us at Elite Business Academy and at our Gmail at eliteyouthbusinessacademy.com at gmail.com.